I've been in the credit space for the last 10 plus
Mm.
years, and it really just came down to a couple things. When there's a will, there's a way. I fell in love with real estate and I was determined to get in there. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I had no
Yeah.
money. I was working restaurant jobs. I was young, but I was just determined. So I didn't even know about raising money from private investor. I didn't think anybody would lend to me. I was broke. I came from a poor background. I know nobody in my family or friends had any of that. So I was like, okay, maybe I could figure out this credit thing. Because I had certain cards that had higher limits, and it just.
Hey, welcome to Networking Star, where we interview some of the top entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and people that just help us do better. Today I have with me a special guest. His name is Brandon Elliott. He's a real estate investor and a credit specialist. Thanks for being with us, Brandon.
What's up, Jeffrey? How are we doing? Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Doing great. First of all, what I have to say is we met over Instagram, and you were wearing some of the coolest pants that anybody there. Like I don't even know how to describe them. Patterned. I would wear them. Just saying this, I'd wear them, but they looked a little bit like curtains, something like that. Where do you get pants like that? I know that's the stupidest question ever, but where does a guy get a pair of pants like that?
Question. I wish I knew exactly which one. I'm gonna have to go back and see which one you're referring to. That's awesome.
They're white with blue patterns on them. I mean, they were pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Most of my stuff Jennifer gets for me, so she's the better stylist than I am.
Well, and that's why good job in making sure that was official. So congratulations on that. But
appreciate
anyway,
you.
So as a credit specialist and a real estate investor, it's been strange recently with the real estate market being hot as can be. It's still hot, but lack of inventory. Banks are laying off mortgage specialists. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with the credit industry for real estate.
Yeah, real estate has been awkward in many ways the last year or so, for the simple fact there's a lot of fear in the market. There's a lot of, everybody thinks that there's going to be some huge crash coming, and the real estate space, there's just not enough inventory to actually make that happen. And obviously, the inflation that we have, the interest rates, trying to get hiked up, record high, that slows things down, try to make things better. It's not necessarily working. It's scaring people off. People realize over some time, we're not going to have that crash that they thought. They still need a place to, buy or stay. So people are starting to get back into it. And we've seen that the last 6 months or so. But the banks, the good news is the banks are still lending more than ever. They have more money out there than anybody could ever imagine and believe. And that's where we really step in, because real estate has 1000% changed my life as an investor. Right? Changed my life completely. Went from broke, busted, disgusted Brandon Elliott, 11,000 in debt, to 8.5 million in real estate assets, and 40,000 a month, whether I decide to wake up or not. So very blessed. However,
I guess that's why you get to go to Greece to do a proposal, right?
Yeah, we went for a full month. We went to 8 different countries, and we travel hacked the whole thing. So I spent maybe a couple $1,000 out of pocket on some restaurants, So we did pretty good. But the good part, or the part that really helped change everything in real estate, was the catalyst, which was the credit. And credit, that's a key component that many people sleep on for a very long time. And what we really specialize in at Credit Counsel Elite is teaching people how to get the banks to say yes more.
Yeah, I was watching one of your reels where you talked about a teacher, for example, that everything is just kind of based upon an algorithm, that whatever you say can almost automatically get them to reject your application. So how is it why does it make such a difference in knowing how to fill out a credit application? It sounds silly. It's just what a basic question. It sounds to me it makes a giant difference in how the bank will respond to you.
Yeah, sometimes the most simplest questions are like the key solution, and it doesn't need to be complicated. But if you really think about it, there's 9,500 banks out there nationwide. They all want to lend to us. That's their goal. That's their, that's how they make money when they put the money to work and they lend it out. However, they're looking for high and low risk. The easiest way for them to be able to take on hundreds of thousands of applications on a regular daily basis is simply having their own algorithms, having their own disqualifications naturally. And certain things will go, to underwriting right away. And if you're underneath certain numbers or certain thresholds, then you could squeeze by with an automatic approval. And so some of these pieces are very, very crucial. It's very important. And what makes it more complicated in the credit space is all of these banks have a different algorithm, a
Mm.
different rule of thumb, a different policy. And so it's important to know a big majority of these banks and do the research, get the data points prior so that you can fill out things exactly how they want so that you can fit within their box of lending. When you do that, then you can walk in confidently knowing that you have a 90% chance of getting this approved.
Well, let me give you an example. I lived through it, so bear
Yeah.
with me for just a second. So I have excellent credit, but I'm an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and my wife and I were in Las Vegas, and we found our dream home on a large estate. It had a pond. It was the most incredible piece of property, but remember, a not going to say an investor. I'm an entrepreneur with
Yeah.
consistent income over a period of time. And it was a jumbo loan, and I had to put more than $250,000 down.
Yep.
They approved us, so we packed up everything in Las Vegas. We're on our way back to Idaho, where I'm from, and
Yep.
on the way there, after selling our home in Las Vegas, on our way to Idaho, the bank says, we gave it a second look, and you're not approved. Whereas we had lots of money in the bank, we put a whole bunch of money down, and they still disapproved us. How do you help an entrepreneur? Because I think I'm not the only entrepreneur that has run into a problem like that. We later went through a different bank and it went right through, but my wife was freaked out. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so how do you help a person that, say, is an entrepreneur that just has stated income, and with taxes as an entrepreneur, you're doing everything you can to show less income. So explain part of the process that you would help with an entrepreneur like me.
Yeah, and when we're talking about mortgages and lending along those lines, a huge majority of that comes down to the relationship and the overall bank that you are dealing with. There's a lot of people that claim like, yes, we can help you, we can perform just as like a real estate investor when you're submitting offers. Everybody says they can perform, but then when, the time comes around, there's all this back out or money issues. Same thing with the banks when it comes down to mortgages. So that can be very frustrating because, the main person that you're speaking with originally, they get
Yeah.
paid a commission just to kind of push you through, and so they're not going to really speak with underwriting and have that communication all the time. If you have a really good strong bank that has underwriting in-house, that's what I recommend when it comes down to mortgages, especially if you're an entrepreneur and your books or whatever may be a little tight and right on the edge of on the fence basically. When it comes down to more of what we specialize in, and it's across the line, any bank products, services that they offer, we're going to teach you all the algorithms and how to get them to say yes more. However, we really focus on getting people up to 500,000 every 6 months at 0% interest, and that's mostly along the lines of getting anywhere from 10 to 40 plus credit cards at a 30-day time frame. So people will actually walk away with like a big stack of cards like
Wow.
this that they could at 0% interest, not messing up their personal.
Well, that's interesting. As you hold those up, because that's what I was going to ask you about. That's one of the things that you talk about in your videos is getting up to $500,000 at 0%. So, of course, that does depend on somebody having really great credit to be able to get that fat stack that you had there of credit cards. So, what are the dangers that you give people? The warning with that. Of course, you could get in real trouble because it's only up to 6 months. So, kind of given an ideal situation of how you would walk a person through that.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So, just to clarify, the 0% interest is it starts off at 6 months, but it typically that's the lowest, and nobody ever really gets them. It goes up to 22 months. On average, the 0% interest is actually from like 15 to 18 months. So, the every 6 months is how often you can reapply and get another 500,000.
Mm.
So basically, every year you can get up to about $1 million, sometimes even more. Depends on how well you really deep dive into all the data points and understand how to do a successful mass apply. And a mass apply is simply just applying for the 10 to 40 plus cards in the right order over that 30-day time frame.
Wow. So basically, what you're saying is that every 6 months, then you're able to get that same credit card later on to be able to apply that, or do you have to get a different card to be able to get that 0%?
Yeah, it's some cards you can get the same one, but a majority of them you're going to just branch out and continue your relationships. Like I mentioned, there's 9,500 banks out there. Most people only have one or maybe two, maybe three bank accounts,
Yeah.
right? I encourage start building more bank relationships because all of them have a product and service that could benefit you and that you could, leverage.
So did you have a mentor in this? I mean, this is kind of that without the right mentor, and that's why you do what you do is you're helping people walk through this. Did you make some massive mistakes along the way, or did you just have a really great mentor that walked you through these steps?
I wish I had a mentor in this section. I had some guidance, by all means. I had more mentorship in real estate and life and just male
Mhm.
figures as I started going down this path the last, several years. But I've been in the credit space for the last 10 plus
Mm.
years. And it really just came down to a couple things. When there's a will, there's a way. I fell in love with real estate and I was determined to get in there. I had no idea how I was going to do it. I had no
Yeah.
money. I was working restaurant jobs. I was young and but I was just determined. So I didn't even know about raising money from, private investor. I didn't think anybody would lend to me. I was broke. I came from a poor background. I know nobody in my family or friends had any of that. So I was like, okay, maybe I could figure out this credit thing. Because I had certain cards that had higher limits and it just came off like second nature. Obviously, I wanted to avoid any fees and interest. So I just figured out how can I get 0%? And I read all the books, podcasts, YouTube, and I made a million and one mistakes over the last 10 years, specifically the first five or six. And then it just started clicking. And we've been helping out people now the last 4 or 5 years, really seeing the difference in them as well and allowing them to cut the learning curve and not make all the mistakes that
Well, I
I
think that's
have.
the key to a mentor is cutting the learning curve. I think any determined person can figure something out, but think how much more money you could make during the, you know, by having you're renting somebody else's mistakes that they've made
Yes.
by doing it. So by getting a mentor. So you're still a young man. How old are you now? So at
33.
33, you've been able to accumulate $8.5 million worth of real estate. Uh, Explain a little bit of that process of what you did as a young entrepreneur to be able to go from zero, just wanting to get in the game, to now having almost $10 million worth of real estate.
Yeah, so the real estate strategy that I personally fell in love with, and I've tried a bunch. I've done, the fix and flips. I've done wholesaling. I've bought the long term. We have Airbnb as well. I fell in love with the BRRRR strategy, which it's B and then four R's. So buy, renovate, rent, refinance,
Mm.
repeat. At the end of the day, it looks as if it's going to be a fix and flip, but instead of selling it for a one time, lump sum payment, what I'm really doing is I'm taking it back to the bank and I'm getting I'm doing a cash out refinance. I'm getting all my money back and having little to no money whatsoever actually tied up into the deal anymore. So now I get all my money back. I pay off my credit cards. I have a mortgage on there now, but ideally it cash flows and rents out for even higher. And so now I get the tax benefits, the depreciation, um, I get the appreciation over time and the cash flow. and no money tied into it. So all of this just stacks up on top of each other, and I can repeat that process using my
All right,
credit
this
cards.
is starting to make sense. I've done flips. That's how I paid for law schools. My wife and I started flipping
Yeah.
homes, and
Yep.
wow, that was quite the learning curve in the beginning. Where you look at it on paper and you think, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to make $60,000 in 2 months," and then you look at it and you're doing like,
Yeah.
I didn't do quite so well," and then you get better at it and better at it. So basically, that's what you're doing is you're teaching people with that the credit cards to be able to first you're purchasing the home with a traditional loan, or are you purchasing it with the credit cards that you have? I mean, that's what you're doing. Then
I've done both. I've done hard money loans at good rates originally, but I've also bought properties with credit
wow,
cards, and it depends on where you're
sure.
at. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a credit card with some serious credit on it. But basically, that's why you're talking the 6 months then, and you build that up over time. You get the home, you fix it up, you get now the bank wants to lend it to you. You're able to pay off those credit cards. Then you now have a rental location, and then boom, you get your money back, and you can do it again. That's and now you've got a long term income source, $40,000 a month. That's not bad. That's I guess how you can go to Greece
Yeah.
for a year. So that's really interesting. When did you start doing this?
So I started in 2015. I was studying 2 full years from 13 to 15, 4 hours every day while I was working 2 restaurant jobs, and I was just desperate to get into real estate. But I was making all the mistakes. I didn't have the guidance that I needed really, and so eventually I started investing 3,000 miles away over in Ohio because the numbers were easier for me to grasp, and my education at the time, it matched that versus the savvy investors in our backyard of San
Yeah.
Diego. Um, so I was buying it with credit cards and then completing, and this is important. This is a very important part, completing the remodels with credit cards as well, paying the contractors with credit cards. And that's crucial, especially for a brand new real estate investor, because all real estate investors get screwed over by contractors one way or the other. There's some kind of, just different breeds, different mindsets, and lack of transparency because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have the right scope of work. So when you have before and after pictures, scope of work, and then you're paying with credit cards, that's like your
Yeah, it
insurance
is because
policy. That's
then
your
if they run
plan.
off without completing the job, you can actually do a chargeback on them.
Yeah. And it's a friendly, like, it's, instead of hunting them down and going to court, it's basically a court process over the phone. Like, you state your case, you send in your pictures before and after, the scope of work, and then you send them after, and then the bank is going to reach out to that contractor and say, hey, defend yourself. Is this the case or not? And so it makes it super fair. And you usually get enough points at the end of each renovation for a
I
free
was going to
vacation
say,
as well.
then
So
you
that's
can
not
go
bad.
to Greece for a month for free because you have put a ton of travel miles on. It doesn't matter. American Express does it, Visa does it, MasterCard does it. So you're able to. Now,
Yeah.
it is the kind of thing that I've been crazy enough to do things like this in the past. But for normal people, we'll just say this when they're first looking at it, like, whoa, that's scary. That's put all of that money on the credit cards, and what happens this, and people always invent a million different things that can go wrong. What is the thing that you would tell that brand new person, and you're doing this every day? Uh, how do you get over that fear and to jump into something like this?
Course. Well, I want to encourage people to realize that doing something for the very first time is scary
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing, in many cases, especially when you're going against the grain of everything that we grew up to believe to be true. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what we're doing here. We're going against everything that we grew up with, all the myths, all the BS around finances and credit. Everything that we teach is almost, you can guarantee, almost exactly the opposite. So we grew up with the myths of you should only have one or two credit cards, maybe a third backup one that you never use. That's 1,000% untrue. You should have 21 plus total accounts to put you in the best, scenario. That's what the banks want to see. They want to make sure that you can manage your finances. I mean, I've heard so many crazy myths. It comes down to the proper education, is what I would say. It comes down to having backup plans. It comes down to, once you understand from beginning to end clearly what this is going to take place and what the process is going to be, you'll actually realize how secure you truly are, how safe and how much of a smart investment and bet this really is, because you don't need to worry and lose sleep at night from borrowing money from grandma or your friends, family, parents. You don't need to worry about that, for the simple fact that you're borrowing money, you're using OPM, still other people's money, but it's the bank's money. And if you think about it, the banks have been doing this to us for
Forever,
how
as long as
long,
the bank has been open, they've been doing this.
Exactly. We give all of our money to the banks at
Yeah.
0% interest. They give us nothing back,
Yeah.
really. Come on.
Well,
And then
unless you have
afterwards,
a
they lend it back.
$250,000 in there, then they'll give you 1% interest.
Yeah, I mean 1%, 0.01% maybe. So it comes out to pennies. So at the end of the day, instead they lend it back out to us. The banks average anywhere from 500 to 3,000% on their money, lending it out to us 9 times over. So we just are teaching you how to flip the script on the banks, get the 0% interest from the banks, put it to work, and you have anywhere from 6 months to 22 months to constantly, diversify and make your credit, your money from the banks work hard for you. And the good news is you can get another 500,000 every 6 months for you, for your significant other, friends, family, clients, and it is very powerful. And this is exactly what the rich do. This is what the top 1% or the billionaires, the Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Richard Branson, like these guys do exactly the same thing. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for you and I. And it really just comes down to identifying it, seeing how they're doing it, and implementing it.
And also I think that I'm sure that as you consult the different people, just the discipline to be able to make sure, because it sounds to me that your credit is the king of this entire process. And so, yes, it requires some juggling, but I can't imagine how destructive it would be to yours to let one of those payments not get paid to be able to affect your credit.
Yeah, and so I always recommend, if you're planning on carrying more debt to leverage it, then I would recommend business credit at 0% interest, so it's not showing up underneath your personal. And I would always set up auto pay on your monthly reoccurring payments. However, you trust, but you verify. You set it, do not forget it. This isn't one of the Foreman grills. You gotta set it, but then afterwards, verify it a couple of days before your payment is due to make sure that it did go through. Make sure that you have plenty of time because I've seen a lot of good people over the years that ended up setting it up on auto pay. Something happened outside of their control. They got a late payment and they are massively getting hurt from it. For the first year, it makes it really difficult for you to get more funding.
It's I guess this is just kind of a real change compared to what I've ever heard. And, I went through a lot of your Instagram reels and things like that. And that's how, we reached out to you. And so you really can get if you're going to buy a home, obviously on credit cards, you're giving that payment then to a title company. How are you doing that to make sure that credit card is accepted for the home?
That's a great question. So basically, the question is, how do you get, most title companies and escrow, they're not going to accept a credit card. So how do you get the credit card to liquidate it into cash to pay the actual, real estate or anything else? Well, there's many ways to this, and this is kind of the part of the secret sauce. But
I guess
share.
That's where people are going to have to tune in to you and let you guide them through that.
No.
But
No, I'll share with you guys. There's many ways. First, the couple ways that I have always utilized is calling up the bank, asking if there's a promotional deal going on behind the scenes that you may not be able to see. Let them know you have an investment property that it's at a killer deal. You want to make. You want to buy it cash. You see that you have a huge credit line on your credit cards. If If you've gone through Credit Counsel Elite, you know how to get the $100,000 plus on each credit card. Afterwards, if there is a promotional deal, it will be along the lines of basically like a cash advance or a balance transfer, but at 0% interest, no fees, right? And therefore, they will wire it into your bank account the very next day. You can utilize it just like cash. Now, there's other ways, such as plastic, for example. It's plastic with a Q at the end instead of a C. That website, you can actually, pay anything like your rent or your mortgage that normally wouldn't accept, credit cards, and they will either wire, they'll send a check, they'll ACH. There's many other sites just like that, and there's just so many different tips, tricks, and tools. We've done a lot of manufacturer spending in the past where you can liquidate and rotate the credit cards around and turn it into
well,
cash.
I can certainly understand now. Once you get it, then it becomes much easier because you can walk into Home Depot, you can walk into almost any of, from Lowe's to all these places to be able to renovate the homes and to get the materials for them. I can understand that process, but I'd never considered the way that you have done it. And I'm a dabbler. I put my cash towards other things, but so much of my cash came from real estate, where I would invest wisely.
Yeah.
I'd never rented. I would just always liquidate them, take the cash, get something else. But congratulations to you. That is a really cool process. Tell people where to find you.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And great questions today. So thank you. How you can find me is, check out, well, first off, on Instagram, you can follow me and feel free to DM me on there if you have any questions. It's Brandon Elliott Investments, facebook.com/Brandon Elliott Investor. And then we do have a weekly podcast. It's called Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. But if you're looking to get more information on how to be able to get up to $500,000 every 6 months at 0% interest, then you can check out creditcounselelite.com. It's www.creditcounselelite.com.
Cool system. Like I say, I hadn't considered some of those things. I am a big believer in the real estate. And my wife makes fun of me because I'm always on Zillow or Realtor.com, just constantly looking for that next deal. We sold our place in Idaho after moving from Las Vegas. We did 2 places in Vegas. We've done multiple places here. And then we moved to Costa Rica and we did the same thing there. I guess it's a problem I have. And so these are really, really interesting to a guy like me, even though I'm not the professional the way that you are. And I'm sure that this will make a difference for a lot of people trying to come up with how do I start, how do I launch it, and very, very cool process. So thanks so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate it. And just everybody know, this is for any business. If you're just starting one, want to grow and scale one, knock out your competition, hire on the best, real estate, whatever it is, you can implement this and everything. So I encourage you guys, stop sleeping on credit, really focus on it. It'll change your life.
Very cool. But that's also a good warning. Keep care of that credit. Credit becomes everything. You've got that right above your head with the credit. So credit seems to me that you take care of it, it'll take care of you.
That's
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.